Good evening, everyone. I want to call the Shelton City Council meeting for September 3rd to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Donna, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember Dorsey.
Here.
Councilmember Inesco.
Here.
Councilmember Krantz.
Present?
Mayor Rogers.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Peterson. Here. Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
Thank you, Donna. Any changes to the agenda tonight? You okay, Councilmember?
It's not working. I'll just share his.
Okay. Any changes? Hearing none? Okay, we will proceed. We'll start off with council reports. I'll start off with Councilmember Schmidt tonight.
Good evening. Only 2 constituent meetings this week and the Budget and Finance Executive Committee meeting last Friday.
Thank you.
That is all.
Councilmember McDowell.
Attended the employee appreciation picnic last Friday, which was fun in park. Briefed with Jeff. I was a judge at Smoking Mo's Cook-Off. That was fun. The block party. We'll be going to a ribbon cutting at noon for the Poppy Shop, and that's the new little gift shop down on Railroad and 4th. So everyone get in there and spend some of your Shelton money. Keep them going. I'm going to visit the Gravity at Transit Center. That's the probably the schooling that people can go to that they don't attend high school or choice. So I'm going to be attending that on Thursday. My Women's Republican Luncheon on Friday. The candidates will be there being asked questions. My Lions Club, after hours, and briefing with Jeff. It's on the 13th. That's my 2 weeks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Thank you. In addition to my briefing with city staff and constituent meetings, last Friday we had an executive budget committee meeting to discuss at a very high level the general fund anticipated expenses and revenues going into next year's budget. And next meeting we'll be looking at dedicated funds as we look forward at prioritizing service and looking for options to present a balanced budget. Next week I have my opiate stakeholders meeting, and PRTPO is also coming up.
Okay, thank you. My last couple of weeks have been a Crossroads housing meeting 2 weeks ago, attended the picnic, and I thank you for the invitation, honoring our employees and getting them started on their Labor Day weekend. That was nice. Coming up, I'll be attending the Catalyst Park open house on Saturday, I believe. And then we have a budget meeting coming up next Friday. And then Mason County Housing Authority meeting tomorrow. Councilmember Cron?
Well, I did attend staff briefings like we all do, and then I did attend the employee appreciation barbecue last week, and great event. Glad to be invited. I will be gone on September 17th. We'll be gone for a week on vacation. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Nisco.
Outside city meetings and staff briefings, I attended the Housing Behavioral Health Advisory Board meeting on the 28th. Also attended the barbecue. Great job the staff did on that. A ribbon cutting for a new music studio downtown, Lorraine's Music Studio. And that was my week.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dorsey.
Other than my regular staff meetings with Jeff, I also attended the picnic like everybody else. And I had a special meeting with Mason Transit on construction and maintenance board that I'm on. And that's about it.
Thank you, sir. We'll start this evening with the first period of general public comment. If you haven't signed the sheet, please raise your hand. We'll get your name on it. And Donna, who do we have anybody listed?
We don't have anyone signed up, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as published. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, the first item tonight is a presentation for a proclamation for Catalyst Park. I will be reading the proclamation declaring September 7th, 2009 as Master Gardener Catalyst Park Demonstration and Food Bag Garden Day. And after I read the proclamation, I'll invite anyone here from any organization affiliated with Catalyst Park to come on up and maybe tell us about the park and your open house on Saturday, okay? So here's a proclamation of the City of Shelton. Whereas Mary Ann Murray and B.J. Beatty, former master gardeners, donated an acre of land to the City of Shelton in 2009. And whereas the stipulation was made that the land become a city park or community pea patch, and that it be called Catalyst. And whereas the City of Shelton gave permission for this, that this would be a food bank garden to replace another food bank garden which lost its lease. And whereas the Mason County Master Gardeners took on the project with the help of the City of Shelton, Shelton Kiwanis, the Mason County Conservation District, Shelton Rotary, the Optimist Club, and interested citizens. And whereas the Master Gardeners, with the help of others, have grown an acre of land previously covered with blackberry bushes and scotch broom into a thriving demonstration garden, providing horticultural education along with produce for Saints Pantry Food Bank, and where community members rent raised beds to learn about gardening practices. And whereas Catalyst Park has been in existence for 10 years, successfully serving the community, now therefore I, Mayor Bob Rogers, do proclaim September 7th, 2019 to be Master Gardener Catalyst Park Demonstration and Food Bank Garden Day in the City of Shelton, and I encourage all residents to join me in recognizing the dedication of the Master Gardener Program which serves our community. Signed, 3rd day of September 2019. So Janine, did you want to?
Sure.
I'll present this to you. You may say some words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'll just say a few words. I won't take up very much of your time. My name is Janine Pulaski, and I am the coordinator of the Mason County Master Gardener Program, which is a program sponsored or affiliated with Washington State University. And we have 48 active Master Gardeners in Mason County that are tremendous volunteers, and they give an awful lot of their time to help raise the level of education of horticulture and environmental stewardship practices in the county. In addition, with Catalyst Park, in addition to it being a demonstration and learning garden, it does produce food for Saints Pantry. And so far this year, we have produced over 1,500 pounds of produce and donated that to Saints Pantry. On average, we raise between 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of produce a year, depending on how many zucchinis versus lettuce heads that, you know. So that's the variation, is really kind of the type of produce grown. And we base the type of produce based upon the client requests at the food bank. So we work in concert with the Saints Pantry Food Bank. We encourage you all to come. The park itself is located at 8th and Harvard in Shelton, and it's kind of a little known gem. And this time of year, it's really quite a beautiful spot. And in addition to the food bank garden, as was mentioned, there are 24 community beds that we lease out for a relatively low price, either $10 or $15, which includes water and seeds. So it's a great deal, and that comes with a monthly educational program. And then lastly, we have a learning garden, and we have various types of gardens that we have on display there for people to learn. And thank you very much. We really appreciate the proclamation, and we hope to see you on Saturday from 2 to 4 at 8th and Harvard. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our second presentation from Liz Arbaugh from the Mason County Historical Society Museum. She is here to give us a second quarter LTAC report and report on the downtown car show. Evening, Liz.
Hello. I'm going to start with the museum, and then I'll do the car show after that one. So we've had a very busy second quarter. So We had a total of 15 people from out of the country, 48 people from out of the state, 124 from over 50 miles. And for a total altogether in the museum of almost 700. And we've had visitors from 13 states, from Alaska to Florida, from Texas to Minnesota, and everywhere in between. And the 6 countries, we've had people from the UK, Brazil, Colombia, Hong Kong, Australia, and Canada. We've had really good attendance for our special events. Mike Fredson did a presentation about John Turno, the wild man of the Wainuchi, which is always a popular topic, which was held at the Alderbrook Golf Club, and we had 117 people show up for that. We had 4 classes of 2nd graders from Bordeaux, which was very lively, and with their teachers and chaperones, we estimate there was probably about 110 kids in the museum that day. We also are planning to work with Mason County schools. We really want to develop an education program at the museum that will tie in with their curriculum. We've had 47 people sign the guest register at the Pie Social at the car show, but we know that there were more because we made $924 on pie sales. So we also were fortunate to receive a grant from a heritage grant from Mason County, and we bought a large format scanner. So we're starting to scan our maps, and then we plan to make those available online. Our volunteers are a really important part of our organization, and we have 6 volunteers, and they've donated a total of about 138 hours at the museum, and this does not include the car show. We have just under 3,000 followers on Facebook, and we've sold books from the website all over the country and even in Scotland, which was kind of a surprise. And we just want to thank the City of Shelton for their continued support for the museum through the lodging tax. So, any questions?
Questions for Liz?
I have one.
Yes.
How many members do you have? Right there?
We have, I don't remember the exact amount. I think it's about 390, I believe. Yes, 391.
I was curious on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead with the car show then.
Okay, number 2, car show. We want to thank you again for the continued support of the downtown car show. This was our 19th year. I was out of town on vacation, so if you have specific questions about the day of the event, I've brought Dave Daly, who is the treasurer for the Historical Society and also a member of the car show committee. It brought in over $12,000 on the day of the event, which is about on par with last year. But we have total donations of about $20,000. Like I said, the Pie and Ice Cream Social raised $924, and the Mason County Historical Society spent a little over $4,000 to promote and then also in support of the event. We had over 400 cars total registered, and then 94 of those cars came from distances over 50 miles and about 7 from over 100 miles. And we estimate that there were about 3,500 attendees. So the restaurants and other businesses that are normally closed on Sunday but decided to stay open did really good business. We estimated last year that about 18 paid lodging units would be sold, but given the number of people that drove over 50 miles and the fact that the car show starts at 6 a.m., we estimate that 31 paid lodging units were used. The estimate for last year was that 55 people would stay in unpaid lodging, but we think that that number is probably closer to 125. And these numbers are based only on the registration and not taking into account the number of attendees. So again, I want to thank you for your support, and do you have any questions?
Any questions on the car show?
that, there's a really nice museum. Every time I go in, I would just probably maybe once every 3 or 4 months. There's something new in there.
Oh, good.
Yes, I enjoy it a lot.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Anything else for Liz?
Anything else?
Thank you very much, Liz,
Okay,
for everything.
thank you.
Your association does. Sure, Dave.
Dave Daly, I'm the treasurer at the museum and also on the car show committee. We estimate that the total financial impact to the city of Shelton is about $50,000 on the car show. You know, we brought in about $20,000 in registration fees and donations and whatnot. But when you take into consideration all the different restaurants, I think if you look at Blondie's and the Strip and Sisters, they brought in about $10,000 that day. So altogether, we think the impact is about $50,000. And thank you again for your support. The mayor was there judging for us, and we had a good time,
Yeah,
didn't we?
good show, yeah. Thank you. Okay, next up, have a report from Heidi McCutcheon on the Chamber's second quarter LTAC report.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council people,
Council people, that's good.
Council.
Members.
People. Yes. In accordance with our agreement with City of Shelton, I'm happy to present this second quarter report on tourism services by the Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce on your behalf. Facebook is a big way in which we get out the word about different events and such. At the end of second quarter, we had more than 2,600 fans. Although if you jump just down below, you can see our reach by city, where during that period there was more than 117,000 people in Shelton that we reached, 20,000 from Olympia, 6,500 from Belfair, 57 from Union, 32 from Greatview, and then 29 from Lacey. So it's been really fun to kind of see our stretch outside of Mason County through our Facebook page. During the second quarter, our page attracted 236,972 unique users and had an average, a weekly average of engaging about 1,200 people. The top post for second quarter was about the installation of the traffic box art, which was done in concert with City of Shelton, and that reached more than 2,200 people and had 560 engagements, which is pretty impressive. The next two most popular posts were about Washington State Free Park Days, and then another about the shipping dates that were released during the summer or early spring. Our visitor counts were down 33 people in second quarter from what we had last year. You'll see that total there, we see more than 5,000 visitors through our doors, both at the chamber office, the caboose, as well as our Hood Sport Visitor Center. During second quarter, our website saw about 15 people per day looking at our events calendar, and about 10 people per day that were looking at the events and festivals in Mason County. So we also did another issue of our Business Matters magazine. It's mailed out as well as included in the Shelton Mason County Journal, so we see about 24,000 people receive that. There aren't any LTAC funds utilized for this. However, there is a lot of information about what's happening in Shelton and Mason County. You can see our major articles about City of Shelton was some renovation work that was done on the caboose downtown. Community events are the beautification program, as you can see all the beautiful flowers throughout town. And then another story about pancakes in the park. So, can I answer any questions for any of you?
Questions for Heidi? Councilmember
Just a
Punch?
comment. Thank you very much for the work that the Chamber does for Mason County and the City of Shelton. It's exciting to have such a wonderful group of business-minded people helping us through this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay. Thank you very much, Heidi.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now we move on to a finance presentation.
Oh,
by
boy.
Our finance director.
Oh, my goodness.
Aaron B. Miller.
Okay, get my lawn chair out. I'm ready for this one.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Aaron B. Miller with the city's finance department. We have for you today the second quarter financial report. So this is all the activities that were posted through June of this year. And while the report does have some estimates, we talked when we did the first quarter report that there really wasn't a real big need for estimates at the end of the first quarter because it's just beginning. We do start estimating things in the second quarter, but take it with a grain of salt because invariably what happens is when we go through the estimating process, there's a conservatism to it. They're going to guesstimate or estimate high on expenses and a little bit low on revenues because nobody wants to get in trouble for estimating incorrectly. So the numbers will continue to shift a little bit as we go forward.
Aaron, can I just ask you one
You bet.
question up front? Would you prefer the questions during the presentation?
Absolutely.
Or wait to the end?
No,
Okay.
I'll just fire away.
All right.
And we're also still trying to find a sweet spot for how we want to present, how the council would like to see this information. So some of it is a lot, some of the pictures anyway, some of the presentation is similar to the first quarter presentation with a couple of updates, and we tried to incorporate that. So we look forward to your feedback at any point moving forward. First thing we wanted to update you on is total cash and investments by type. The chart above demonstrates by color what you see in the numbers below. As you can see, we're at about $4.2 million in our bank account. LGIP, which is the local government investment pool, is close to just over 9.8. And we have about $1.3 million in our long-term investments. And we went over those when we did the investment presentation, and those are the same ones. Freddie Mac, it's $300,000. That will mature in April of 2020. And then we have 2 federal farm credits. The first one will likely be called in 2020, again in June of 2020. And the second one, both at $500,000, will likely be called in June of 2021. Currently, the LGIP daily yield is about 2.2%. However, looking at the Fed funds future, that was something that we showed that chart when we did the investments. It's looking what the futures, and I don't know who they poll, it's certainly not me, but 100% think on the meeting on the 18th, the rate will move down another quarter of a point. So again, as that directly affects the earning capacity of the LGIP because it's short-term investments.
Just for the audience and myself, what again is let me get my glasses straight. LGIP.
It's the local government investment pool. It's run by the state treasurer's office, and it's a very good way for entities to earn a little bit of return on their dollars.
Right, thank you.
Next slide, not much to say here, just want to demonstrate where we are in a different type of graph. The I guess yellow one at the top would be the local government investment pool. Bank account is in the middle, and then you can see the uptick in the most recent quarter for our long-term investments. Total cash and investments by fund. Just wanted to break this down so that you could see how much money, there's the 15.4 million nearly that we have, and who kind of owns that money. As you can see, much of the money is certainly owned outside of the general fund. General fund balance is about 3.7 million, and the rest are divided up amongst the other funds. Wanted to talk a little bit about general fund revenues and expense. The chart above shows the 2017 actual, where we ended the year for 17 and 18, what we budgeted for 19 originally, and then the revised budget, and now where we think we're going to end up. So the good news on that is that when we did our revised budget, we were thinking that we would end about $1 million in a negative fund balance. That's planned because that's transferring a lot of money out of general fund and into the street fund since we created the new street fund. That's the transportation benefit district monies that went out. So planned, it's not a surprise. But as we go through this, it looks like that is shrinking just a little bit. Instead of $1 million right now, we're at about $714,000. And again, that will continue to massage as we go through it. Wanted to show the bottom graph, just as a reminder. We had this conversation, I believe it was in the first quarter financial report, of fiscal sustainability and how our expenses are increasing at a rate much higher than our revenues. And what happens with that is what you see here. In 17 and 18, we actually had a positive gain in fund balance. But in 19, we reversed that trend, and as the Budget Committee knows, we're looking at 2020 as well with that.
And Aaron, just a lot of money that was transferred to the road fund, it's about 800,000.
Exactly, it was 790.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank
Wanted to give you a picture of the general fund revenue by type. Looking just at the bottom line, the last column on the right, which is a percent compared to budget, we're pretty close. We are pretty close to what we budgeted. There's a slide coming up that deals a little bit more with with taxes. And we'll talk about that when we get there. Suffice it to say, the tax number is conservative. And we'll talk about that when we get to that slide. And unless there's any questions, really the only thing I was going to mention in the charges for goods and services, the variance there is really the difference between the Metropolitan Park District reimbursements and the school resource officer reimbursements. And those are both directly affected by expense. So if those costs go up, we'll get more reimbursement, and if they go down, we get less, but it equals each other out. Wanted to show this graph, general fund revenues by type. It's the same account grouping, but we wanted to show kind of where we are through June. So the lower of the two hashed lines would be about 50%. And of course, we talk about this a lot. Revenues don't always come in exactly where they should be, 50% in the first 6 months and 50% in the second 6 months. Taxes, while it shows that we are over that amount, that's only the first payment on property taxes. And so it will kind of sit there until November when it will jump back up. All in all, and this is a good demonstration why percentages aren't always great. It just looks like we're killing it on other financial sources, which is $5,000. So, but it's a lot higher than the 4,000 or something that we had budgeted. Let's see, next slide, I think. General fund total revenue by year. Again, just another presentation of where we are in the general fund, giving some comparative information across years. You can see that we have the 17 and 18 actual, the 19 revised budget, and then right about where we are for the 2019 estimate for general fund resources. Tax collections. Promised you that this slide was coming up, and so what we did is we broke down our taxes a little bit into more easily digestible chunks. And I do want to give fair warning. It was brought to my attention that what we call B&O taxes is not straight B&O tax. It includes things such as the city utility tax, the utility tax that we have on electricity, phone, cable, all of that, as well as the B&O. So of that $2.5 million estimate that we have under the business and occupation taxes, almost $590,000 of that is the city utility tax on water, sewer, storm. About $1.2 million is the utility tax that's on electricity, phone, cable, and natural gas, and then about $720,000 is straight B&O on that. Just to give you a little bit of parameter, we'll make that adjustment moving forward. It was already published, so we didn't want to change that up. Property taxes, right about where we think we would be. Retail sales and use tax. So this is a question that we had a good discussion at the Budget Committee on. Our 2019 estimate is conservative. I would expect that by the time we're ready to do it, that's going to jump up closer to the 2018 actual, which is great for 2019. The question that we are struggling with is, what do we do about the construction activities? Right now, roughly, I'm going to change this view too, which again, this breaks down the sales tax a little bit more. Roughly, construction activity accounts for about 24% of our retail sales tax. That's roughly about $700,000 of the estimate of $2.9 million. About 24% of that is coming in as construction. As building permits are normalizing, what then do we want to budget in terms of that type of revenue moving forward? It's not something that we feel like we can just take 2019 and make an incremental increase forward, because so much of that is dependent on construction. So it's something that the Budget Committee has been grappling with a little bit, and something that we're continuing to grapple with. Just wanted to make everybody aware of that at this point. General fund expenses by type. This is just to give a flavor of where we are in terms of wages and benefits, service charges, supplies, and all those other categories. And then on the bottom part of that is their percentages broken out. That's the percentage of the estimate of the 12.7. One of the conversations we had at the previous Budget Committee on August 9th, we presented this chart, and I thought it was appropriate to present that here. As we start building 2020, and as we're looking at where do we need to be on revenues, and again, we talked about how we want to estimate our revenues for 2020 based on realistic estimates, albeit conservative. We don't want to stretch it more than we should. We don't really want to stretch it at all. So we want to build good estimates of things that we think will happen. With that, then you fit your expenses into that. You build your revenues first, and then you fit your expenditures. This we wanted to demonstrate because it's not easy to find expenditure reductions. So, salary and wages are about 50% of the revised budget, and if you exclude the $790,000 transfer of TBD monies to the street fund, it's about 54%. There's a big number on service and charges, and if you take the fire services, our detention and correction, our legal services, our dispatch services, as well as insurance, that accounts for about 65% of that almost $3.6 million number. So that's about $2.3 million of it, and those are services that we need. The capital charges, $273 is for the library, and I didn't finish this thought. $100,000 was for the finance system upgrade. And then in the transfer outs, even though it's about $2 million, 1.5 of that supports the street fund in different ways. One was the transfer of TBD monies, and the other is the transfer of general fund support for street activities. So looking at that, it looks like a big number, but when you break it down, it's pretty lean. It's pretty lean. General fund expenses by department June year to date, showing that hashed line is the 50% and just kind of the above the board and below the board. If you're above the board right now, it doesn't necessarily mean much, because expenses, just like revenues, can come and go at different points of the year. The kind of bluish column there is we had a request to show if we amortized or spread the insurance costs that we pay in January, where would the HR and risk budget be? And so we're showing them in both spots. We have where they are as it would show in the accounting system, and then if we amortize that. So we wanted to show that difference there. General fund estimated expense for the end of the year, again, same idea. We have the hash line up at the 100%. Overall, we're coming in about 96.5%. Just for your information, under the Public Works, which is showing about just a little bit over their max, there are some professional service charges in there that we think should be moved out and distributed out to the enterprise funds, working with Craig on that. And then also the IT budget is showing over, and the IT budget is very, very tight. So we're currently projecting a little bit of overage in maintenance and repairs. To the extent that those don't have to happen, that would shrink that back down too. Again, a lot of times we have a conservative estimating approach at this point.
Aaron, on your estimate, we currently have open positions.
That's correct.
How are those estimated out, as filled or?
No, what we did for, in general, what we did for positions is we said the first half of the year is, or the second half of the year is going to look like the first half of the year. So positions will ebb and flow, and a position that's open may get filled over here, but something that's filled may become open over here. And so just because we don't really know, that's what we did with that. Public Works funds, again, not sure if this presentation works, so we decided to lump Public Works funds together, and that includes obviously the equipment rental fund, sewer, solid waste, storm drainage, street, and water. This presentation just provides information on where they were for 2017 and 18 actuals, the 2019 revised budget, the June year to date, and then our estimate for those funds, both from the revenue on top to the expense on the bottom. I think a much better presentation is these, because it kind of gives you a visual of where we are. This is the Public Works Funds revenue to budget. Again, some of these budgets for sewer and water in particularly, they may be a little bit conservative on the revenue side. So those might end up being a little bit higher. You can see the 50% of the year where we are. That's the green, brown. And then the yellow are the projections moving forward. Wanted to provide the same information, comparable revenues by year. So you have, again, the 2017-18 actuals, and then 19. The gray is the enterprise fund on the left-hand side. Yellow is solid waste, and the reddish brown is the storm drainage, just so you can get a feel of where they have been over years. The yellow, which is solid waste, obviously in 2017, that was our last year of having a solid waste, of doing that in-house. So that includes revenue from charges as well as the sale of assets, and so that was a big year. And then moving forward for solid waste are the Department of Ecology grants for the cleanup. That's what we're showing on there. The other side is street, water, and sewer. We just lumped those guys together so that they could use the same scaling. Again, nothing there that looks very surprising. Public Works funds, this is the expense to budget. In this case, you can see that storm drainage and street are a little bit over. Both storm and street will likely be bringing adjustments as part of our next budget adjustment. The current street estimate includes costs associated with the snow and ice event that happened earlier this year. We did not address that in the first supplemental. And then storm includes some planned transfers for major projects that we need to true up in the budget. And so, again, just making sure that we have the right levels there. The last set of funds that we'll talk about then are our bond fund, capital fund, payroll benefits, and tourism. Same demonstration as we had for the public works, just showing the revenues on top and the expenses underneath. Again, getting to a more visual presentation. Bond, capital, payroll benefits, this is their 2019 revenue to budget. The columns on the left are June year-to-date, and the columns on the right are where we think they will come in according to our estimate. When we show comparable revenue by year, we broke this out again just so the scaling would be right. On the top, we have our bond fund, payroll benefits fund, and tourism fund, and then on the bottom is our capital improvement fund. Expenses, same fund groups, or same group of funds, I should say. This is where we think they'll be at the end of the year, so you have the June year-to-date and the 2019 estimate. Again, these things, the estimates will continue to be refined, and so even though I think it looks like capital improvement is slightly over, we'll just wait and see where we are at the end of the third quarter. And then again, same thing, comparable expenses by year. On the top are the three funds, the bond, the payroll benefits, and the tourism, and then the capital improvement. I would just add that the large expenditure level in the bond fund in 2017, we paid off the first part, the first bond of the Civic Center, the UTGO, which was the voter-approved bond. So that got paid off there, and the large increase there. In expenses, which then reduced. This year, of course, is the last year of the LTGO for the Civic Center. So that will have a presentation change as we look at 2020 moving forward. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Additional questions for Aaron?
Well,
Councilmember Dorsey?
I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say that the way you put this, Aaron, is just so professional
Thank you.
and easier to follow than what we've seen in the past. And your confidence is just, I think I can speak for the whole group.
Appreciate that.
It's much easier to follow.
Thank you.
Councilmember.
I was gonna say how complicated it was, but no, I'm always kidding, it's just a joke. But the one question about construction, and so you do get revenue from a lot of, like, you know, the hospital and the schools and here, and next year, and how to forecast that. I'm gonna just guess that residential construction is probably gonna be the same, if not more, for 2020, but that we should have indicators on what's coming down the line. So I would think we could figure it out pretty close, because, you know, we would know if a big new business or, you know, and what, I mean, we should pretty much, I think, but unless residential all of a sudden slows up, but nobody can find a place to live right now, so I'd imagine houses will continue to be built. So is that how you would think you're gonna approach? Because you said there's a question about that, you know?
Yeah, it's going to be a kind of a two-pronged approach. One is exactly what you said. What do we know is going to be happening? And then the second part of that is what's happening now that's going to continue into 2020. I don't know exactly, but the heavy construction, which is not the residential construction, the heavy construction is the bigger chunk of that revenue. And so as Downtown Connector keeps going, that will be something that we can say, well, that's a big project that's going to be happening in 2020, so we can, you know, make some sort of estimate there and moving forward. But some of the other big projects that are finishing up, those will not bring money in.
And then a follow-up on the other part of, as far as real estate taxes and whatnot. Okay, from, you know, I've been in the construction business, I own some rentals, and, you know, and so I'm kind of aware and hanging out with people that talk a little bit, but we had a house recently that appraised at $450, they asked $500, and it sold within a couple of days for $525. So we're seeing sales beyond anything, we're in that. And so I would imagine, if not this year, next year, or the year after, that some of these realities are gonna be coming around, you know, but, you know, as far as, you know, what do you call, property taxes. So But, you know, it says when it clicks in, it doesn't click in, but we are seeing some pretty hyperinflation right now.
Yeah, and that will really help on the real estate excise tax, as you mentioned. When it comes to property taxes, I'll just remind the council that
Oh, yeah.
we're constrained by the 1%.
That's
So
right.
even though, and that's citywide, so what happens is there's a shift as, you know, in taxes. So we don't necessarily see a lot of increase from that unless the assessor goes out and increases the assessed valuation. But even with that, we're constrained to the 1%, so the millage rate has to be forced down on that.
I was just trying to find you some money.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Additional, Councilmember Schmidt.
Just a kind of a question relating to the upcoming amended budget. You had talked about a couple pertaining to Public Works Fund, for example. I just want to make sure, understand too, is this, by not having the amendment in place, does this prohibit any current delivery so we can finish out 2019? So we're continuing business as usual and we'll make it up at the end.
That's correct.
Kind of thing? Okay, great.
Yeah, the reason we didn't make the amendment during the first time, even though the snowstorm had already passed, is we didn't have a full accounting for what the cost was, and we didn't want to estimate and then miss and have to do it again. So now we know exactly how much that February snowstorm cost us. We can add it in and have an accurate number for council.
Other questions for Aaron? Seeing none, thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, next is City Manager Knighton will update us on the communications strategy report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. I am going to I will introduce Kate Elliott from Malfoster-Alongi. She has been our project manager for doing our new communication strategy and outlining that and setting us up for success in the future, how we communicate with our citizens internally among ourselves, and best practices to make that happen. And tonight she'll be presenting her final report, and I hope you enjoy it, and we're happy to answer any questions. I will, and if I can't, Kate's here. So.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for having me here. All right. So again, I'm Kate Elliott with Malfoster-Alongi, and I've been helping with the communication strategy. And first I'll start with sharing the public engagement results, and then I'll talk about the final recommendations. Technology is not my strong suit, so we'll see how this goes. Okay, so just a quick reminder, I was brought on board to help assess our communication strategy at the City of Shelton, so review and evaluate our existing communications tools and practices, assess compliance, organizational capacity, and then again, develop a written report with some recommendations, so that's what I'll share tonight. So the communications survey, we fielded an online survey through SurveyMonkey. We kicked it off July 9th with advertisement on Facebook, the city website. We did a radio spot, and we also mentioned the survey at the last council briefing we did back in July. We received 156 responses, which I hear is pretty low for you guys, but for anywhere else that I've ever experienced is amazing, so nice job there. And I just want to note that many of the comments were overwhelmingly positive and supportive for what the city was doing, so that's always good to hear. You know, sometimes surveys are opportunities for people to provide all sorts of comments, but generally it was really positive. So I'll go through each of the questions and the high-level results. So how do you prefer to receive news and information from the City of Shelton? It's important to note that folks responding to this question could pick more than one option, but overwhelmingly we saw 70% of folks use Facebook, which is not really a surprise, but it's good to know in data. And then behind that, 36% use the website and 31% get their information through email. So obviously, as we're looking at planning communications moving forward, we want to emphasize the use of Facebook and online tools. But then you also have to plan for people who don't use online tools and have the regular traditional outlets. print media and whatnot. Do you feel like you know what is happening at the city? 66% of people feel sufficiently informed. That's pretty good. In fact, I think that's actually really awesome. The 34% that said, nah, and we asked what they really want to know about, they said elections, when are they happening, who's on the ballot, what are their issues. Good news, things that the city is doing that are good news, which we all want to talk more about that, that's great. And then a lot of people mentioned things that we already communicate about. So focusing on how we're sharing that information and who's sharing it and making sure that, you know, we continue to plug this information so folks know all the good stuff we're doing and all the stuff we are already saying and where we're saying it. Question 3, have you used the city's website in the past several months? I'd say this is a resounding win. 92 respondents use the city's website regularly. Folks that haven't used the website in the last month haven't had time to do so or need, or they're new to the area and still figuring things out, or they get information elsewhere such as Facebook. Was the city's website easy to navigate and find what you were looking for? Almost half of the respondents said yes, which is also really good. Remaining responses varied. They'd like more updates. They want road construction and impacts on the homepage, and would like a staff directory with contact information, which when I navigated for that exists. It's just not completely filled out, I believe. Question 5, do you have any thoughts on how to improve the city's website? Lots of thoughts. 21 people said no, which is good too sometimes. But again, a lot of people recommended things that we already do, which is good to know. How do we make those more navigable and easy to find? And then again, more photos, make it more fun, friendly, and inclusive, all sorts of great recommendations here. So we have definitely documented all of that, and we'll cover that in the recommendations.
Kate, excuse me, are you up for questions while we're going?
Yes.
Okay.
Meant to say that.
Can I go back one?
Yes, maybe. Nope, maybe.
Previous.
How do I do that?
Previous.
46%, okay, 46% said the website was easy to navigate. You said, is that a good number, really? I mean, that's less than half. I'm wondering, can we make it easier?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was a lot of good feedback on what specifically they think we should do to make it easier, and
Okay.
that's the sort of feedback that is helpful. And honestly, I think when you think about the folks that take these sorts of surveys and the feedback you generally get, I think if anywhere near half to things are good and great, that gets back to my comment that
Okay.
the comments were overwhelmingly positive. But yes, the whole point of this is how can we do better?
Okay. Just 1 second on that, what you said, I follow up on that just a little bit. It would appear that people, I responded to the survey, and I said, I put on their Facebook. That's, I see what's happening. That's how I see that in my day-to-day life, okay? But people that respond to surveys and whatnot, a lot of times, they are going to be wanting to be involved in the survey to want to improve things. So your numbers like the 46% saying it's okay, you would have a larger number that might want to be involved with surveys to try and change something. So that figure of 46% might be a little bit swayed by the fact that a lot of people responding to the survey. If you're happy with the way things are going, you're not probably even going to respond to a survey. Does that enter into that, what I'm talking about a little bit?
Definitely. I think there's usually a spread between the people who will always have an issue and make a point to participate in something because they have an opportunity to air their grievances, and then you have the people who are already plugged in and want to make it better and therefore have the positive feedback.
Yeah.
That's usually.
That's what would explain like a 46% rather than this 80%
Right.
is because people want to use this as an opportunity to try and change something, which isn't bad. It's just, probably you can't just take a number and go, oh, half the people think we're doing a bad job. Because you're only getting the segments that are doing the survey, you know.
Right, it's just a sample of the larger community.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, question 6, I think that's where we were. Do you go to Facebook first or news? And for news and information, 70% of people said Facebook first for convenience. Again, I don't think anybody will be surprised by that, but it's important to note as far as planning our future communications. 30% said they go to another source first, primarily Twitter, the city website, the radio, and then also some people noted that they don't like to use Facebook at all, so another source. Do you believe that the city should focus more resources on managing its Facebook page? 57% indicated that more resources should be put towards managing the Facebook account, and 43% said that it's good as it is. I mean, when you look on there, it doesn't look like a totally even split. Obviously, there are several people that use Facebook and want more resources towards it, but it's not, you know, the 5% and 95%. So I do think it speaks volumes to the amount of work that is already put into Facebook and managing that outlet, and I think it suggests that we continue on that trend of using Facebook as a primary source for news and information. The police department is considering setting up its own Facebook page. Do you think this is a good idea? And if so, what information would be helpful? And majority of folks said that a separate Facebook page for the police department would be excellent, and they want to hear the same sort of stuff that they otherwise hear: traffic problems, accidents, some more good news or human interest stories like personnel bios and the new K-9 unit, and then Good Samaritan stories within the community, which I thought was really nice. So we make lots of improvements there. And then specifically, in what ways do you believe the city can improve communication with the public? And timelier, more accurate, and current information across all platforms of communication. I think that's what we're always striving for. Can't argue with that. More public and face-to-face meetings. That's something that I heard from all audiences and something that we'll talk about briefly in the recommendations, but that's definitely something we want to start to integrate more of. Improve the website that we've talked about. That's definitely a priority. And then videos and live streams of public meetings, events, and projects. I think there's some new ideas here that, or maybe not so new, that we can evaluate and discuss further as they'll take more resources. So, any questions about the survey before I?
I have a question. Looking back at questions 1 and 6, we're talking about how people utilize Facebook. If we had 156 respondents, do we know how many of those came to the survey from our Facebook page? Because it would seem to me that that would drastically skew the results. Because if I'm coming from Facebook, my answers about how I utilize media may be very different than someone coming in and filling out a paper survey or mailing something in or any other mechanism. So can you speak a little bit to that?
I don't have that number offhand to how many people were got to the survey through Facebook, but that is a really good point and why we made a point to post the survey elsewhere as well and also mention it on the radio. That's always a struggle, you know, especially when you have such a high. We know that we have a large population that uses Facebook as their primary source of information. So I wish I had that number handy, but I don't.
Will there be any recommendations on getting information out to people for non-computer users? I mean, I rent U-Hauls, and you'd be surprised who does not have an email, so that means they probably don't use a computer either.
I think that's the best practice. As I mentioned earlier, you know, the survey results, though they may be skewed by folks that got to it through Facebook, we recognize that there will always be folks that get to your communications and news through non-computer sources, and how that's, you really have to maintain that as a baseline best practice. So I guess what I've seen from the city in the analysis of the existing materials, there was lots of traditional communications tools used beyond social media. So I didn't feel like that needed a big emphasis in the final report.
And if I can jump in there, I think a big piece of that communications tool with the public, especially the general public that doesn't use social media accounts or even have an email address, is our newsletter that we started this year that's going out once per quarter and provides a lot of good information. It's not nearly as interactive as you would expect, but provides a lot of the information about the city and the activities that we are going forward with now.
All right. So before I jump into the recommendations, I just want to say, oh, I'm sorry.
Something I'm kind of mulling over here is the large number, a fairly big percentage of people that would like the police department to have its own separate Facebook page or information page or whatever. And I'm kind of thinking, just in my opinion, you know, if we start, and that may be exactly what we do, but if we start departments having their own, then people, I think, to a sense, are where do I go for city information? I mean, I guess I'm a supporter of this is our city and it has all departments in it. So if you got an emergency or you want to know what the police is doing, you go to our Facebook page. I mean, I guess I'm kind of thinking it could be counterproductive because people that might want police information, would that, I'm assuming would all be included in the city's web page too. It would just be a duplicate of the police having a separate one maybe. You know, I was just kind of thinking about that you may find, if you were going to separate it, you'd have people going to the city and there's nothing about police here. So that don't make sense to me.
I think there's a lot that needs to be sussed out there if we do proceed with separating out the police Facebook page. I think it's an opportunity to provide instantaneous notifications to the community that the website may not provide. I know that we're looking at new website tools, which may change that conversation a little bit, but I agree with your point that it can make it confusing for the public to know where do I need to go for information. So there would need to be a heavy emphasis on for
One spot. It
Yeah.
seems like just,
yes.
And to kind of follow up on that, because I had the same kind of thought, centralizing communications is probably important. But you did put it as a recommendation in your overall plan to develop a crisis communications plan. So I'm assuming that just kind of falls in line with whatever you guys decide you want to do from a crisis communication standpoint, which is just basically anything related to any emergency that occurs in the city limits. I do agree with Councilmember Cron, separating things out, you know, it sends people to one place and then they're asking traffic-related questions to the police, and is it gonna be monitored 24 hours a day? Are you gonna have the supervisors on shift being PIOs and tweeting and Facebooking when they're already, you know, pretty busy as it is? I think, again, centralizing, we're a small city for the most part, you know, centralizing it in-house with the communications officer is gonna be probably a better choice for now, but.
It's all good feedback, and I know, Jeff, you were telling me about some website updates that allows for emergency notifications and other things that we weren't aware of even a few weeks ago, with how that might be duplicative.
I'm sorry. Well, just, you know, because I filled this out and I said Facebook's where I go. The only reason I get it from Facebook is because I'm on there doing whatever else I might want to do, and it pops up.
Yep.
It comes to my little seat. I go, oh, the city's doing, oh yeah, that's right, I remember I voted on that. You know, that's why Facebook is easy for me to get because it's spoon-fed to me daily. So in all of your studies and whatnot, maybe a lot of us are just so addicted to Facebook or whatever that's just where we get it, because we don't take the energy to go type in the city website. We just like that it's there, it's popping up, it's reminding me of things. So in all of your evaluations, you know, when I answered that, I answered it from a point of what do I do basically if I just get all the city information right on my little page without me having to even look for it. That's why I thought Facebook was a good opportunity I'm continually updated on what's going on, not as I'm searching out an answer to a problem.
So there's a little difference why they answered the question that way almost. Because that, now I'm gonna say if I took the survey again, there might have been a question, for example, of, okay, do you search out the information or you just like the Facebook because it just pops up and it just naturally informs you? I kind of like that because then it, not a lot of effort, so.
From my perspective, and certainly best practices, it is so much easier to just go where everybody is, go where they already are going, rather than create a new tool or something else that they have to navigate to. So you're exactly right that the whole point of this was to understand and confirm assumptions about where do people go to get news and information? How do we make sure that we're leveraging those tools so that we don't, you know, spread ourselves out 100 different ways and really everybody's here? But to your point, we do have to cover our bases. We can't just do
Thoughts,
Facebook.
that's all. I will shut up now.
Okay. So I just wanted to take a minute and say that I got a lot of really good interaction with all of you and Jeff and city staff and the public, and this has been a really fun and interesting project for me, so I appreciate all of that. And as much as I'd like to do a page turn with y'all, I know you already read the report, obviously, but with 64 pages, I thought maybe I'd just bring it up a notch and make it a little more high level on the recommendations. So again, feel free to interrupt me and ask questions as you have them. And really, a lot of this is the same as what Jeff shared in July. Was it July? And we just built it out from there. So nothing entirely new here. But from the feedback, we've identified a few early priority areas and several of which we've already made headway on, which is really great. Update the communications specialist, no longer officer, job description. We did that, and I hate to make any note of timing, but I'm glad that we did it when we did because it's up and posted right now, so great. Create guidelines for working with the new communications specialist. I attended a weekly directors meeting on August 21st, and we had a good working session to set out some expectations about what can this new communications specialist expect from the city directors on how to get news and information in order to do their job to communicate about what's going on. And we established several working assumptions and expectations about what that looks like. And my assumption here is that the communication specialist can come in day one, use that protocol to work with the staff, and then, you know, by day 3 or whenever, they'll have their own system in place, I'm sure. So this is just to get them off the ground and to also get the rest of the city directors on the same page about what's expected. Leveraging the team. This is something that it sounds really broad here, but what it gets down to is we have a lot of great folks here that already are out in the community providing updates and interacting with folks. So we want to make sure that we plan and program that and make sure that we're using it for communications updates throughout the year. And some of the tools down the line in this presentation will address how we do that. Develop and implement a general communications plan. Again, this was mentioned in the last presentation, but we really just need to have that general communications plan that directs our efforts, the communication specialist efforts throughout the year, and something to reflect back on how it's gone. This plan will identify goals, key messages, key audiences, and the best tools to reach each audience. Part of the plan will be a content calendar, which will populate with all the good news stories, awards, events, positive news that we can plan for, and it'll also include all the public works activities and projects, especially those with traffic impacts and things that people get really excited about. I've created a skeleton of this plan with descriptions to help the new communication specialists build out, and I fully expect that as they work through all of those different elements, they'll be giving you guys all updates on status and, of course, working with the city directors to make sure that everybody else is on board with what it says in there. Organize and update the communications procedures, templates. I made a bunch of templates, all sorts of templates. Just, it's good to have a place to start from, a place to jump off of, and perhaps the new communication specialists will have their own templates, but this is a good way to just have resources all in one spot so they don't have to recreate the wheel. And part of those templates are a social media plan and a social media policy, which we talked about briefly, but it's critical to have some of these details spelled out and have those conversations early with the council and staff. So we want to make sure that we do that early as soon as the communications specialist is on board. Compliance. Again, I reviewed several existing communications materials, as I mentioned earlier, against several, I'm blanking, I'm sorry.
Best
Several
practices.
compliance
Best practices.
tools, best practices as well. And really what it came down to is there's a few formatting and language additions that need to be added into regular public-facing documents to clarify what are the accommodations that the city of Shelton can make should you need them. So that was nice and reasonably easy, and it's good to see that. So not a whole lot of news there. And then in-house skills. It's important to note that, you know, this new communication specialist will come in with some expected skills like InDesign and other Adobe Suite, Microsoft Word, that kind of stuff. But perhaps they're not going to be an amazing photographer with a fancy camera and that sort of thing. So a lot of folks throughout this entire process have said that they really would like more photographs for the website and communications tools and all that stuff. So what are some creative ways we can make sure that we're getting all of those services if they're not in-house, especially under this one position? Perhaps there's somebody within the city staff who is an amateur photographer, or we can look at partnering with local schools to provide internships with these services, which I've worked with other municipalities on. So things to explore as we identify what those opportunities are. Long-term updates, and again, nothing new here, but these are long-term recommendations that are already in the pipeline but are important to complete pending budget. So these are things that Aaron B. Miller can help budget and make sure that happen in the 2 to 5 year time frame. Giving you a heads up. The strategic plan update. I've done a few strategic plan updates. It's kind of, we do communications and strategic planning, and they have been really great opportunities to bring the city staff and the community and the council on board, and it's like the most, I'm gonna embarrass myself here, but like a really great way to kumbaya and just have a level set of what are we going towards, what's the horizon look like, and it's a huge communications and public engagement opportunity. So I just want to stress that here so everybody remembers to do that as you go on in the future and work on that strategic plan update. And of course, the city rebranding and updating the website. These are also major endeavors, and I know they're already planned for and we're working on them, but huge community engagement opportunities to get their feedback, more specific feedback on the website. You think about user testing, everybody has an opinion. You can get free labor that way. Get people to help you out, test the website. And then rebranding obviously will be, I think, a big deal as I've seen it play out. A huge deal for the community because they'll want to have a hand in what their city logos and what their streetscapes with their new city logos look like and all that. So huge opportunities coming up on the horizon, and I want to make sure they're not missed. So with that, are there any questions?
Additional questions? Seeing. Apparently none, Kate.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate your time tonight. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay. We'll move on to our next another presentation, I guess, from Craig. On the update on emergency data project, I assume at the wastewater treatment plant, correct? contract.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Just wanted to start off by thanking Tim and Chuck in our IT department for working so diligently on this, and also Brent Armstrong, our superintendent, and his staff down at the wastewater treatment plant for manning not only the main plant, but the satellite plant for more than a month, 24/7, to make sure that we were taking care of no violations at the wastewater treatment plants as we were moving through this. So several months ago, the council approved an emergency purchase moving forward, and just wanted to give you an update today of where we are at with that. We are just about finished up with it, a few loose ends to tie up. But when we first presented this, some of the high points or main points of this, the Wonderware software was presented to you at a budget of around $50,000. To date, we are at $28,000. That has taken care of both the plants and the lift stations, but does not include purchases of the dryer and the Ovivo screens at the satellite plant, which will be an additional $15,000 to $20,000, still bringing us under budget of the $50,000 that was relayed to you. The top view system is fully installed. It was ranging between $6,000 and $8,000. It came right in at $7,000, so just under the top or the middle of that range. Consultant work to implement this entire system was estimated between $50,000 and $75,000 at the time. We have gotten that done at a total cost of $50,450, so at the lower end of that range. Some of the notable points that were a little over budget, the SCADA nodes that were purchased originally were relayed to you at a quote of $9,100. Those came in just slightly higher at $12,239, about a $3,100 difference. And the main overrun or cost overrun for that was adding a ninth PC. Originally, it was going to be 8. We had to add one additional to that. And then the server costs were projected to be about $7,100. Quite a ways over budget, but in the large scheme of this, fairly small amount of about $10,000 over budget. And the main reason for that was originally we were looking at those servers being able to tie into the servers that we have now. When we looked at that, the servers that we have now are a later model. So we had to go with a later model to configure with the 2 that we have existing so that they would actually communicate with each other. But what that brought with it was a little additional consultant fees to set those up, and also a 3-year warranty that was not provided with the older model. So basically a closeout model that we had to purchase that didn't come with a warranty with it. So we had to actually purchase that 3-year warranty. But with that being said, much more cost effective and efficient using an older model that would talk to the 2 existing models that we have, rather than purchasing 3 newer models that would come with those warranties. So a much better way to go there. And then additional costs that weren't accounted for originally. Originally, we thought that the nodes would be able to adapt to the touchscreens that we have in locations now. They weren't able to do that, so we had to purchase all new touchscreens at the main plant and the satellite plant, which ran us just short of $8,000. So all in all, with where we were at, quite a ways under what the projections were overall. We did have some snags in that ran us a little over budget in certain areas, but those areas that did run over budget were the smaller dollar amounts that we had. So all in all, under budget for that entire project, with getting SCADA back up and running, and now having all of the main plant and the satellite plant now running and communicating with alarms and calling out to individuals if we do have issues at the main plant or the satellite plant. Be happy to answer or try to answer any of those questions that you might have.
Joe?
What's
Excuse me,
the-
Councilmember Schmidt.
What's the expected life cycle of the new stuff? Are we kind of planning like on a 5-year, 6-year, 8-year, 10-year cycle for that, or not sure yet?
The actual life cycle, expected life cycle, I'm not sure, but the reason, what the exact years are, but these components will last us a significant amount of time as an upgrade over what we previously had, and the server that we purchased not only will handle the SCADA system for the sewer, but will also allow the water system to be upgraded at a much cheaper cost at a later date. But I can get you that exact year.
As long as we're planning for it, that's all.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are these a redundant system, so we don't have to go through that again? If one goes down, is there another one to keep it going?
That was one of the reasons why the PC's number jumped from 8 to 9, so that we have that redundant system. So if an event like what happens again does occur, then we have a system on site that can immediately replace it. We have all the circuit boards or whatever motherboards, whatever they are, mirrored, so that we can, if one blows up, we can immediately slide one in that already has the information.
Well
Just-
done.
Just a general question. This was an emergency fix,
Correct.
but we backed up and said, we're gonna do it the way we had planned to do it with an upgrade, correct? Or a lot of it was already semi-planned to be upgraded anyway.
That's correct.
So-
This was a very aging system that was partially budgeted to be upgraded anyway. It was just that outage that kind of kicked everything into fast forward to get it actually done when it went down. But we've been planning for this for a number of years. Budget restricted us from getting it done in prior years, but it was funded for this year. Just with the outage, kicked it into fast forward and wanted to get it done in a much timelier fashion.
And that being said, where we're at now, you're good with? I mean.
We're confident we've got a system in place that will last for the years to come.
Okay,
Yes,
right. Thanks, Greg.
you're welcome.
I'm sorry for making noise ripping up papers. What happened is the city manager and I have had a conversation over the past week or so. I promised to get him information, and it came to me that I have to give that to him tonight. I ripped off a piece of paper and I wrote that down, so later I'm going to hand this to you, but it's not polite to make ripping noises from the city council. Forgive me for that. Right? Fair enough?
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay. Anything else on this item?
I just think the overall message is, we took an unfortunate circumstance with our system blowing up, and even though it all wasn't completely budgeted, council took the opportunity to upgrade the system so that we'll be able to use it for years to come in an efficient manner.
Absolutely.
And this is gonna help with the shellfish growers, this?
It has the capacity to do so. We've got some other components coming on online that are budgeted for this year. The UV system, the redundancy to that, which will be tied to this, and also notification for future to divert that flow from the bay to the slack tide tank if we do end up having an issue. So yes, that's a great point to point out that certainly will help that situation with Department of Health and our shellfish growers in Oakland Bay.
And I just want to reinforce your thank you to your staff for getting through this with
From
no
all of
major
us.
events.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
I think the council really appreciates that.
We do.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Along with a upgraded system, we don't have staff that are working around the clock.
Yes.
Right, that's.
Till the phone rings.
Phone rings, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So the
Greg.
alarm
You're
goes
welcome.
off.
Okay, there are no business agenda items tonight, so move on to action agenda items. Is there anyone signed up to speak on any of the items?
There is no one signed up, Mayor.
Okay, our first item is 2019 residential paving contract and award. Public Works Director Craig Gregory has details.
Thank you again, Mayor and council members. As we presented to you a couple of weeks ago, we put this out to bid after the road rating plan went into effect so that we could accurately define the roadways that we needed maintenance on and put out to bid the 2019 residential paving. We ended up getting 7 bidders, which in this economic environment is very good, with a high bid of a little over $267,000. The low bidder being Central Paving at about $194,000. So pretty good bid amounts coming in, and are excited to get going and get that maintenance done with those maintenance overlays. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the council? All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move to approve the 2019 residential paving project and authorize the council to sign the project award form and the mayor to sign the contract with Central Paving LLC.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just have a question when that paving's gonna start, and can we get that out on the website and Facebook and?
We certainly will be communicating that. We've got a plan to do that this week to get that communication started, because we'll be out doing some edge grinding, some repair on Adams Street of some roots that are blowing up the street there. So that communication will start this week, and you'll see some maintenance crews out there doing some activities, raising catch basins, things like that. And then actual paving will be sometime around the first week of October. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that the weather holds out for us a little longer. So about the 1st of October, we're hoping to get that completed, and it'll take just a few days, keeping that all kind of centralized in one area.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the 2019 residential paving project and authorize the council to sign the project award form and for me to sign the contract with Central Paving LLC. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
Now we're back to Director Gregory for information about the Washington State striping agreement.
Very excited to bring this to you, Mayor and council members. This is something ongoing on an annual basis that we need to put together a scope and get out for bid. Those bids have been increasing every year. Last year was around $15,000. So reached out to WashDOT to ask them if they would be interested in providing long line painting services to the city. They did get back to us with a contract that is a 5-year contract not to exceed $62,000. They've estimated that with the quantities we've provided them, that the annual striping contract would be around $12,000 a year for the next 5 years. So there is some provisions in here that would provide for an increase to that dollar amount if paint prices go up, fuel, things like that. But right now, with where we were at with the private side, I think we're getting a much better product from WashDOT at a much cheaper price and a guaranteed time frame of when they will be coming in each year, which has been a little hit and miss moving out of the very early season.
And you want,
Yeah, I'll be recusing from the vote. Yeah, hang on.
just, sorry.
Yeah.
I saw that look on your face. So, yeah, looking at it and getting outside of the very early season that we used to paint in right before Forest Festival, early in April or May, moving that back so that that paint will last much longer through the winter season, and painting much later in the summer to early fall is a little tough with the private side contractors. They're pretty busy at that time. So WashDOT has agreed to fit us in at the end of their painting season every year. So it'll provide us a little more consistency on when that will take place also.
Questions for Craig?
Will that striping be done on all the new roadways that have been done? You know, you have the little tags on the middle of the, you know, up by this Walmart and the school.
On the chip seal portions,
Yes.
absolutely. It'll be done on all of the roadways throughout Shelton.
That's getting them really confusing, where to go and
Yep.
what lane to get into.
We are working with them right now to schedule as soon as we get done with a vote tonight, and if this gets approved, we will schedule with them tomorrow.
Okay, very good.
So this is like 12 grand a year for 5 years, give or take paint costs and whatnot, which is cheaper than the 15 grand, I think you said?
Last year, it was around 15 grand, so about a $3,000 savings per year
Yeah.
moving forward.
And they can start when?
They should be able to mobilize within a couple of weeks is what they've indicated to us after we get this approved. They should be able to do it within the month of
What are
September.
we waiting for? Let's do it.
Thank you.
Wow.
I'll make a couple comments. One is, I have a concern, and just because it's the DOT, I respect them, but it's also a cost-plus contract basically with the DOT. That's the way I'd phrase it. And the other thing, I hope we take this window to look at other possibilities of contracting, maybe on a longer than annual basis, a longer-term contract where a private company might give us a better price for a longer agreement. That's all I'm saying is, this sounds like a great deal, but except for the one contractor we've used historically, that's what we're comparing to.
And I guess just to follow up and answer a little bit to that, in the past, when we have bid this, we have basically used one contractor for the last approximately 20 years, but they have been the low bidder. We have had only, at least over my tenure overseeing this, really only 2 bidders that have been responsive to this bid packet. So it's been a little limited on the private side of who we could actually get. And to your point of a longer contract, we did reach out to MRSC for some guidance on this. On the private side, legislation just passed that would provide for a multi-year contract through the private side. I think that would be a little more expensive than what we're getting with WashDOT, but that legislation did just go through last year, or early this year, that would allow that. So it is allowed now, hasn't been in the past, but certainly is an opportunity to reach out to those private sector contractors for maybe a multi-year contract.
And I would imagine to do it in-house, it would probably be very expensive to buy that equipment.
Absolutely. Long line striping's a very expensive truck. We've got the ability to go do smaller road sections with a walk-behind striper, but
Like that?
yeah, but no, for those trucks are very, very expensive. Yes.
Any other questions for Craig?
Nope.
Do we have a motion?
And move
Okay.
to approve the striping of city streets to be completed by WashDOT by authorizing the mayor to sign a maintenance agreement with Washington State.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Councilmember Schmidt has recused himself. We have a motion and a second to approve the striping of city streets to be completed by WashDOT and authorizing me to sign the maintenance agreement with Washington State. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I just have one question about the paint. Since we're coming, we know such a good bid on that, is there a possibility of using a little bit better paint to last a little longer?
I think the quality that you're going to get from WashDOT, it's really the thickness of the paint that's driving it. It's not necessarily the quality of the paint, it's really the thickness of the paint. But I think you'll get a much better product. And just something to point out, one of those things that on all of our projects now that we have made a point to bid them, much like Downtown Connector, you haven't seen them yet, but recessed reflectors that will be installed. And that's still something that's going to be done on the downtown connector project, but we're committed to the rest of our transportation projects to have recessed reflectors, which will also help with that.
Down on, in the ground.
Correct, so they don't get plowed off when we go and plow snow or do maintenance. They'll be down into the pavement.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks, Greg.
you're welcome.
Okay, now it's time for a second session for general public comment.
I still have no one.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Okay, so we'll end up with the city manager's report. Jeff?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a couple things I want to mention real quick. Did want to mention there's been some discussion around town about the use of Roundup in the city for weed activities or weed clearing activities and things like that. Wanted to assure the council that we are no longer using Roundup or any of the insert scientific name here that I can't pronounce on any of our parks or our roadways. So we are on the active search for another product that will satisfy our requirements there, but as of now, we're not using that anymore. Second, let's see here, the cleanup program. Last weekend was the last week of the cleanup program, and I wanted to thank, first of all, Shelton School District for allowing us to use their parking lots. That was extremely helpful for us, and with the coordination with them, Mason County Garbage for assisting us with that program every weekend for the last 8 weeks, and the Mason County Transfer Station, who has helped us out a great deal. I also wanted to particularly thank Chief Moody and his code enforcement officer, Officer Watanabe, and our Public Works team and Craig for helping staff those events and keeping those events going and helping clean up Shelton as best we can, offer the opportunity to do so. I do have statistics. I don't have statistics on the number of tons of garbage yet, unfortunately, but throughout the entire program, we collected 63 vouchers, so that's 63 properties have been cleaned up as a help the city of Shelton clean up and get those properties taken care of there. So I think that was a relatively effective program and over the summer, and I think it worked out really well. We also, and Craig will, I'm sure, bring him, and I think a few of you met him at the picnic last Friday. But our new city engineer has started on Friday, and hasn't run away screaming yet. So we're good to go there.
He would have been here tonight, but he had to watch his kids because his wife is a school teacher, and it was open house tonight, so.
Oh, well, there you go. And we'll, I'm sure we'll bring him on the 17th, or if we have any new employees started, we'll try to get all those in at one time. But I'll keep you up to date on when we expect Ken to come, and we'll introduce him formally. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Jeff, if I may, just to follow up the cleanup day, the city's concluded our cleanup day, but Way does have their day of caring free dump day this Friday. We spoke with them today. They do still have vouchers available at their office, so if anyone is still interested in accessing those vouchers, it gives them access this Friday from 10 to 2 at the transfer station on Hills Hill Road.
Okay. Anything else for Jeff? Okay, seeing none. Any item for the council to bring up tonight? Okay, again, seeing none. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, September 17th, 2019 at 6 p.m. We are adjourned.